he actually introduced me once to Richard Stilgoe in Italy. He said, Richard, have you met Georgie Fame? He's very interesting statistically. Well, according to the great Tim Rice, I'm the only person who ever toppled the Beatles off the #1 spot twice. I mean, I didn't know that, but I believe it. I mean, it doesn't really mean anything. When Ringo got appendicitis in 1963, Paul McCartney rang up and they borrowed my drummer, Jimmy Neal. They took my drummer to the Far East, to Singapore, Hong Kong. I think then Ringo was well enough to rejoin the band in Australia. Yeah, funny okay. He once rang me up again like Paul and said, hey Georgie, you know some jazz musicians, don't you? I said, well, depends. He said, well, can you get me like a couple of trumpet players and 2 tenor saxophone players and send them to Abbey Road on Friday morning at 10 o'clock? I said, well, all right, who do you want? I said, what about Ronnie Scott? You want a jazz musician? So I rang Ronnie. Yeah, Ronnie, you want to play with the Beatles? They got a session at Abbey Road. Him and 3 other great jazz musicians went along to Abbey Road. It's Friday morning. I climbed out of bed about midday, because we were always working very late in those days. And I went up to Abbey Road to see how they were getting on. And they were playing Lady Madonna and Gotta Get You Into My Life. And at the end of the session, Ronnie Scott came over to me and said, yeah, I thought you said you wanted jazz musicians. Anyway, that's a lot of water under the bridge. But this song began life as an instrumental. It was composed by 2 musicians who worked in a very fine Afro-Cuban band based in New York City. That band was called Mongo Santa Maria and his orchestra. They had a big hit with Watermelon Man, which was composed by piano player Herbie Hancock, who spent, I think, just 24 hours in the band. But the next piano player to take the chair was a man by the name of Rogers Grant, and he, along with the baritone saxophonist in the band, Pat Patrick, composed this thing. Mongo recorded it as an instrumental, slow, like Watermelon Man tempo, and the great John Hendricks, the master jazz lyricist of all time, in my opinion, John put lyrics to it, as he had done with Watermelon Man and several other jazz compositions. And John Hendricks did the first vocal recording of this, which was now a song, at the Newport Jazz Festival in 1963, and he was accompanied by Coleman Hawkins on the tenor saxophone and Clark Terry on the trumpet. So this song has incredible or immaculate sort of Afro-Cuban and bebop connections. Now, me being a student of John Hendricks, I just went out and fall asleep. They hear this every night. Anyway, me being a student of John Hendricks, I went out and bought his latest record. I bought it in a wonderful jazz record store in Old Compton Street, Soho. It was called Strickland's. Bought a lot of good records there. And every time we play at Ronnie Scott's every year, I walk past the building where this great record store used to be, and it sells like outrageous lingerie now. Anyway, I bought John Hendricks' latest album. This song was on it, and we practiced it, and then we started to play it around the clubs. Everybody liked it, so we decided to record it, and the next thing we knew, it was on its way to #1. So, on May 31st, 1965, me and the band and one of our managers flew to our first overseas engagements, and they happened to be in Scandinavia. And we flew from London to Stockholm, Sweden, on Scandinavian Airline Systems, which back then was a world-class airline. Back then, being the operative. But even though we had this big hit record, we were in economy class. But we didn't know the difference in those days. We were just glad to be on an airplane. The plane arrived in Stockholm, taxied to the old terminal building, which back then was just a single-story affair. And we looked out the back windows of the aircraft and we could see dozens and dozens of beautiful young blonde Swedish girls standing on the roof, waving and smiling. And naturally we thought the reception committee was for us. Well, you do, don't you? You see the Beatles have got it, the Stones got it, we thought it goes with the record. Anyway, by the time we walked off the aircraft onto the tarmac, they'd all disappeared. And the reason was that Roger Moore was in first class. Absolutely absolutely true. I'm amazed you haven't heard that story before. I've been telling it for 50 years. And ever since that day, I've had no illusions about that starving thing. When she asks me